Today is June 20th, 2016. My name is Joe Todd. This is an interview with Lewis Davis in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Sir, where were you born?
Born in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, July the 23rd, 1946.
1946. Who was your father?
Lewis M. Davis. Of course, that makes me a junior.
Yes. And your mother?
Her name is Hazel, Virginia, year out.
When did you start to school in Bartlesville?
I started to school at the Highland Park Elementary School, 1952. Yeah, probably.
So you started at the Highland Park School.
Highland Park School, 1952. Went through the first 5 years, and then before the beginning of the 6th grade, we moved to the Dewey School District and started school at Dewey Elementary in the 6th grade, and I continued to finish and graduated at Dewey in the class of 1964.
In your school, who was your favorite teacher?
That's a good question. I'd say, and this was in the junior high years, a guy by the name of Melvin Peters, and he was a coach, and he wrote all the material on the board, and you had to copy down all the material off the board. He was a history teacher, but he was probably my favorite. He was quite an influence.
What type of work did your father do?
He was a smelter man at National Zinc until he was disabled in the early 50s with back problems, and retired as a disabled ex-Zinc employee.
What did he do with the smelters?
What did he do?
Yeah.
He was he worked on the furnaces. It started at 3 in the morning, and they usually worked, if things went well, it was like a half shift. Usually by 8 o'clock, 7, 8 o'clock they were done. He was home, and then he worked a second job. He was a detail man for Van Zant Motors, and he was a good provider. He worked hard, a lot of hours, but until he got to the point where he couldn't. His back was so bad that he couldn't do much.
Smelter smoke.
Smelter smoke, yeah.
How bad was that?
I don't, my grandparents lived right there on Busey, just, close to the plant, and I never called any problems with it. The worst problems was probably automobiles that sat out there in the parking lot. I remember Dad was he was a detail man, and I remember talking about that acid or whatever, and that dust would eat the paint if you didn't keep them clean, and good polish on them.
What did you do for recreation in high school?
Recreation?
Yeah.
Oh, enjoyed playing baseball, played some football, played basketball, mostly street ball, with the neighborhood kids. That was probably the biggest area of recreation that I can recall.
You played sports in school?
Yeah, I played all 3 sports. I didn't. I was always kind of a small guy, so I played football as a senior, and basketball, played baseball. In fact, our senior class was the state Class B runner-up. Mm-hmm. Lost in the finals to Binger, Oklahoma, and lo and behold, the fellow that pitched and was on that team was a fellow by the name of Johnny Bench. He was a sophomore, and ended up losing to him in the finals. And we had a little article, it was in the Examiner, that Mike Tupa did here just recently. It was exactly 50 years between, it was 1964, and this 2014 team that Dewey had that went to the final game, and they lost by a couple runs. But he did a nice story on how close both these teams were to winning the state championship.
Did you climb the mound?
Did I climb?
Mm-hmm.
Climb Pike, or I climbed in there. I drove up Pike's Peak. That's probably the closest thing to climbing. I don't like heights, but no.
So you didn't climb the mound out here then?
Oh, the mound. Oh,
The mound.
yes.
The mound.
Yes. Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
What'd you do up there?
Looked for artifacts mostly, as something that we could, stir up. I remember when they did the fireworks on 4th of July, and of course the grandparents were right down there close, and we were out there churning ice cream by hand and watching the fireworks, and it was a distinctive memory in my early childhood. It was exciting, the fireworks. Now, of course, today it's not. The kids don't.
You climbed Circle Mountain?
Yes, we went up Circle Mountain. That was kind of a prime park spot up there for some.
What about Doty's Dumps?
I don't think I ever drove Doty's Dumps. I don't think so.
It's still
I've heard of it, knew where it is,
Yeah.
but I don't think we ever drove it. Used to spend a lot of time out running around in the quarry out east of the Dewey cement plant before they kind of fenced that off and stopped it.
Yep.
A lot of
Used to go out there and
areas
hunt
to play.
fossils.
Yeah, a lot of things. Go out there and bushwhack Parkers and that type of thing.
No Hamp Scudder on that.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was. There was a lot of places to play. Probably a lot of places to get hurt, but I recall nobody really got fortunate enough they didn't get hurt.
What was your first car?
First car? It was 19. This is after I joined the Air Force, and I bought. After I'd been in about a year, I bought this I think it was 64 Dodge 4-door sedan that I drove back and forth between here and Abilene, Texas, a number of times, and kept to just before I went to Vietnam, and then we sold it. But, that was the first automobile that I had owned. A beige Dodge. I can't remember the model. It wasn't a Coronet. It was a full-size Dodge. In fact, it was the folks that bought it new, or Dad did, and they decided to upgrade. Good opportunity to upgrade, so he sold that to me, and they bought a 65 Dodge with all the bells and whistles on it.
What stores did you shop?
What stores? The old Gibson store. I remember when that first went in, because it was close to the school, grade school. I'm trying to remember there was a market right there on the corner of Tuxedo that where we'd get our nickel pop, and the old put the nickel in and slide the bottles and pull them out. And of course, the first Lotta Burger that went in right there on Worston Boulevard. Remember?
The building's still there.
Excuse me?
The building is still there.
The building's still there.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Now, where did you live when you went to Highland Park?
Lived on Rockwood. In fact, if you come, it's like a block off of Tuxedo. There was an old green 2-story house, one of the original. In fact, it was one of the original houses. When they bought that place, it was just basically undeveloped land out there. And during the few years we lived there, they started building these houses out there. And I can remember turning up lots of rocks, and there was scorpions galore. I remember getting stung on the big toe there in the house with a scorpion. But that old house is gone now. That's just a bare lot now. But we lived there. Remember, it had a fireplace, and the fireplace caught on fire. So Dad had the fireplace taken out and put a picture window back in the west side of that house. But,
now, the interurban street.
Yeah.
Any of those tracks still there?
I think they are under the asphalt. They're on Second
that was
Street,
a
I
trolley
believe.
car.
Yeah, I think they just asphalted over it, covered them up.
Where did that interurban go? Do you know?
Went out to Tuxedo, and then went from there up to Dewey, kind of on the path of the current Highway 75. I think is what I've read in my Washington County history books are correct. But that was all pretty well, when I was born, or young, old enough to remember anything. That was pretty well all gone.
Yeah.
Let's see. I was trying to think. Of course, I was born in the old Memorial Hospital. I think Mom said I was either cost them $50 or $75 or something like that back in '46. Mm-hmm. A lot of us, I think, were local boys were born in Washington. If you weren't born at home, then you were born in that hospital.
Where were you when President Kennedy was assassinated?
I had just come back from lunch, and I believe I was in my senior year, I think. And I remember coming on the car radio, and totally stunned by this couldn't be possible. But yeah, it was a shock. Like I said, I think probably everybody remembers where they were at the time that the information was released.
And before that, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Cuban Missile Crisis.
What do you think about that?
Well, a scary time. I think President Kennedy handled it in the proper manner. It diffused a pretty tough situation, but yeah, it's one of those. Everybody worried about back in those days. Worried about having your fallout shelters and all that. in schools, back then they ran drills for that.
Duck and cover.
Now it's a different story. It's terrorist attacks in schools and that type of thing. But yeah.
I remember the commercials on TV of what to do for radiation fallout.
Yeah. I hope we never have to face that. But,
yeah. So you graduated in '64.
1964.
Do you remember the Gulf of Tonkin incident? The
Gulf of Tonkin?
Yes. Mm-hmm. It was 1964?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
What did you think when you heard about this?
I really never had a clear understanding exactly of what took place. I've read about it some later on, but at that point, when I first heard about it, it was just some place that was totally removed from anything I had to deal with. Just another incident that took place as far as I was concerned. But who would ever thought that we would have ended up over there, like we were? It was, when you're young and somewhat fearless, you don't think about things that might befall you.
Yep. So when did you join the Air Force?
I left in October of '64. It was right after graduation. I worked at the Dewey Benson Lumberyard through the summer, and then myself and two other classmates were signed up to go in the buddy system in October. So I'm not sure what the date was. We actually met with the recruiter and decided I knew I wasn't really going to go to college at that point, and I knew my draft number would come up, so I had to weigh my options and thought about the Marines, and I changed my mind. Well, maybe I can get some type of education or training in the Air Force that would help me further down the line. So I decided to join.
Is this why you joined the Air Force?
That's the reason I joined the Air Force. Yeah.
Because I always ask, why'd you join the Air Force over the Army or the Navy?
Right. And like I said, I thought about the Marines, but probably my better judgment helped me to survive my ordeal. But I thought maybe I'd become a jet mechanic or something like that, But I didn't. When they test you to see what what MOS or whatever you're going to get in, I was kind of across the board. So they stuck me into becoming a loadmaster, and of course I had no idea what a loadmaster was, but it was really a good opportunity. I was fortunate to
Where'd you go for your basic training?
basic training was there's only one place, and that's Lackland Air Force Base.
Lackland.
San Antonio. That's the only place that the Air Force.
How'd you travel to Lackland?
How'd I what?
How'd you travel to Lackland from?
I first, they drove us from Tulsa to Oklahoma City. We took a load, just in a car, I think it was, or a wagon of some kind, and for overnight in processing, and then we caught a flight out of out of Will Rogers, my first flight, and through Dallas, and then and they all seem like they always time it where you arrive in the early morning hours. So we got to Lackland, and I think they gave us something to eat, if I recall, and finally got us into a barracks and where we could bed down. It was, like I say, I know it was it seemed like it was 1 or 2 in the morning, and I thought, well, of course there was others already sleeping there at the time when we arrived, and I thought, well, they'll give us the opportunity to sleep in since we got in late. Lo and behold, that wasn't the way it was. When daybreak came, they were rousting everybody up and kicking beds and got us up and got us going. So that was the beginning of my we were I was in Flight 5 of the what they call the 6-week wonders, because normally they had been an 8-week program that they were using. Well, they kind of rushed things through. They had chopped it back to a 6-week program. So I was number 5 at the beginning of the 6-week wonders, and went through the mostly pretty normal procedure, probably not near as tough as the Army or the
What type of training did you have in basic?
The training? Well, of course, history of Air Force, physical training, rifle range, confidence course. They can run you, like I say, in that period of time, what they can get you through. Mm-hmm. But that was about, if I recall correctly, that was about it.
What rifle did you train with? What rifle?
It was the M16. I think I got I was a sharpshooter, but I got a pretty decent score. I wasn't, as growing up, I wasn't really an experienced hunter or anything, but made it through.
So after basic training, where'd you go?
After basic training, of course, that's after I received my orders to go become a loadmaster. The school that to train you for that was in Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas. So I go from one Texas city, across the state on a bus to the tech school training, and I think I spent I think the training there was November. It was probably a couple months, and I think the biggest thing I remember was the cold wind in Wichita Falls in that type of year. You wouldn't think it would be that cold, but it was cold, especially in the early hours when you get out and march to chow. I think I was in the afternoon classes. March a few blocks to the classes where they held that, but made it through and graduated from loadmaster school. And
what does a loadmaster do?
What's a loadmaster do?
Yes.
Well, we were loadmaster drop master, so we did, and I was assigned to a tactical group, so we did airdrops, paratroop drops, and cargo, and they train you how to figure the balancing load and cargo in an airplane, how to
center of gravity.
center of gravity, right? Do a lot of work on that and how to restrain cargo and that type of thing. But it was pretty interesting.
What airplane?
I was assigned to Dyess Air Force Base in Abilene, Texas. So I went to my third city, and it was C-130.
C-130.
C-130 attack group. I was in the 5/16th Tactical Airlift Wing. Dyess Air Force Base. Abilene, prettiest town I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Not sure if they meant Kansas or
That's
Texas.
what I've often wondered, that Kansas or Texas?
Which one it was? But it was a neat place. Three Christian colleges. A lot of girls. Had a lot of good times in Abilene. Spent the first three, after basic training and technical training, spent the first 3 years of my enlistment there. And we were fortunate enough to get to fly all over the world. We had a one, what they call a TDY unit over in Evreux-Fallville Air Base in France until and we'd go over for a rotation for so many month or two at a time, and then we flew out all around Europe, and then we had one in Okinawa where we'd go over and rotate to that, and then we'd fly routes through Vietnam to Okinawa, to Thailand, some of the fighter bases, just resupply and various things that we transported into Japan, Philippines. So we covered that area fairly heavily.
What type of cargo would you carry?
Well, we would haul everything from Army vehicles, trucks, and we hauled ammunition, pallets of like non-perishable food items. But they had a pallet and rail system in those C-130s where stuff was loaded on pallets and basically strapped or netted down, and then you just roll those, figure the weights and get the weights right, and roll them in, and they had locks where you could lock them into the rails. And the same way we did airdrops with it. You drop a pilot chute and suck out, releases the locks. Hopefully out you goes and you don't get hung up. But that was a lot.
If it hangs up, what do you do?
Well, I never had one hang up, but
Okay.
you could release the chute,
Okay.
because you once you get that chute to pull it out, if something goes wrong with the hardware where it doesn't release it, then you kind of got a problem if you can't cut that chute loose.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, we did a lot of paratrooper drops out of Pope Air Force Base, which is just right next to the big Army base, and we'd go in there. Fort Bragg.
Mm-hmm.
We'd go in there and drop a lot of guys that were in training. I remember, talking to a lot of those young paratroopers about, especially if we had to call off the drop, and you were going to have to bring them back to land. They were scared to death because they sold them on, you're a lot better off to jump out of these airplanes than you are to land. I tried to convince them, if it's you never want to jump out of a good airplane. But they didn't understand that very well. But spent a lot of time there at Pope. Trying to think where else. But anyway, we spent most of that 3 years. Now towards before the end of that 3 years, I began my the squadron I was in initially was the 345th Tactical Airlift Squadron. Well, they decided to transfer that whole squadron to Taiwan, and so they could fly missions into Vietnam.
Yeah. Now I'd like to back it. You mentioned France.
Yeah.
We still had troops in France at this time.
Yeah, at that time. That's before who it was. They booted us out.
De Gaulle.
Yeah, it was De Gaulle or whoever it was.
I think the best thing that, was it Johnson, the best thing that he ever said when De Gaulle said, I want all the American troops out.
Yeah.
And Johnson said, exactly the ones that are buried there.
Absolutely. And that was, I remember that because I don't know, that went on, our rotation of sending planes over there and serving that area went on until that they finally said, okay, this is going to stop. I never did like French very well. Anyway. I called them frogs, but step on any toes, French folks.
So you're sent to Taiwan.
Yeah, that squadron was going to be sent to Taiwan. So I guess I was fortunate. I wasn't. They transferred me to the 347th Squadron, which stayed there at Dice. So I didn't go with my group when they went to Taiwan. But it wasn't too long after that I received my orders to cross-train to C-123. So I was going to get to go anyway in the country. So I went to Hurlburt Field, Florida, there near Eglin Air Force Base, and that's where they trained the crews for C-123s.
Now, when I was in Vietnam, the Army had some C-123s.
The Army did?
Yeah.
I don't recall Army having any. They had Caribous. They were kind of similar. They were a twin engine prop.
Maybe it's a Caribou.
I think you think of Caribous. I don't think the Army had.
Anyway, the Army had some airplanes there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, they had Caribous.
Yeah. Okay.
In fact, I caught a ride on I think between Cameron and Fan Rang was where we were based on a Caribou. They were a lot slower than the C-123s.
Now, what's the crew of a C-130?
A C-130 crew, pilot, co-pilot, navigator, flight mechanic, and loadmaster. So there's 5.
Now, what about C-123?
C-123, one less. You had pilot, co-pilot, and a kind of a flight mechanic, no navigator, and then the loadmaster.
No navigator?
No navigator, no.
How'd you know where you're going?
Well, I was trying to remember. The only distant, of course, in country, you've got, the beacons and all that they can follow. But across the ocean, I remember ferrying one from the Philippines over, and I can't remember if they needed. They may put a navigator on those type of flights. If it was somewhere where they didn't have beacons to read to follow to get to where they were going. But and that was an old B model. See, most of them after I got over there, they went to what they call a J model. It had 2 jet pods that they put on to help them with takeoffs and short strips. But this old B model, it was just an old noisy turboprop, but reciprocating twin, and they were a little noisy. They were a little noisier than the C-130s, but. Of course, they sent us to Hurlburt. We got with their training, and then.
How long were you there? How long were you in Florida?
I think it was like a month. And of course, that's right there on the. We had a lot of fun down there. The ocean's close, and we had a lot of time to water ski and whatnot in the little inlet there by Eglin.
Was it difficult to go from C-130 to C-123?
Not really. Basically the same. They didn't. They used a different system in there as far as the platform that they airdropped with. But it wasn't. Our duties were pretty well the same. We were involved in, when I went out to fire them up, when they started cranking them, when the fuel started running out, you give thumbs up and they get the ignition on them. C-130s, we never had that duty, just to be out kind of helping when they were maneuvering around the ground if there wasn't ground crew to kind of keep them.
Now, you have one ground crew for the same airplane?
What now?
You have the same. They have a ground crew for your airplane.
No, not just for our airplane, but they generally had a crew that handled.
Did your airplane have a crew chief?
Well, the flight mechanic was the crew chief.
Okay.
I think on C-120s C-123s they called him the crew chief. I think.
Yeah. Okay.
But it was.
And he flew with the airplane.
He flew with the airplane. Yeah, there was a seat. I know on the C-130 there was a seat just between and behind the pilots, and he monitored all the gauges and controls when they're taking off. And I think basically on the C-123 it was pretty similar. Let's see. Anyway, of course, from there we went to had to go to survival school up in Washington State. Put you through the POW training and all that kind of stuff. Box. And, had to do compass navigating across the mountains, and I think that lasted. And a little hand-to-hand combat training. Once that was complete, and then we went to the Philippines and did jungle training for like a week, I think. Rain constantly seemed like when we were out there and trying to sleep in between trees and with rain every day. But from there on over to Saigon. I think I landed in Saigon. Tonsanute. That was. That would be about somewhere around the 1st of July of '67. That's when I think boots on the ground. And didn't stay there very long. They instead of putting me in that squadron that flew out of Tonsanute, they transferred me to the 311th Air Commando Squadron, which was stationed at Phan Rang Air Force Air Base. And that was just not too many miles inland from Cam Ranh Bay. And pretty nice. It was a pretty nice air base. Twin concrete runways. It wasn't a bad place at all. Fairly safe. Place to come back to.
You still have 123s?
Yeah, 123s.
You still loadmaster?
Still loadmaster.
Okay.
I finished my whole 4 years, or almost 4 years. Yeah, a little bit early. But once we were settled in there, we did. When the C-130s, when they had that group that went over to Taiwan, they started doing some of the things that were previously done by the C-123s. We more or less did a lot of the Special Forces camp, short strips, supply, and moving people in and out. We hauled cattle, Vietnamese peasants. I mean, you name it. We probably entertainers. We moved a lot of different troops, dead bodies, prisoners. It was now our group, our squadron out of Phan Rang. We had of course a temporary duty station at Da Nang that we went up for like weeks at a time, stayed there, and that was a less favorable place to stay because they'd get up close enough to throw rockets in there at night. You know, we were trying to, and we were kind of right on the perimeter fence, and of course on the second. Since we were temporary, we were on the second floor barracks. Mm-hmm. So when they started shooting rockets in, and because everybody had to pile out and fly down the steps, get in the bunker. Of course, didn't pick up any weapons, so you're sitting in a bunker, and it really gets a little bit unnerving when the guys at the guard tower, which is just pretty close to your bunker, start shooting. Like they're coming through the fence, and you're sitting in your skivvies with no weapon at all. But that was the less favorable of the two places where we slept was Da Nang, and from Da Nang we'd fly missions up to Dong Ho, which was right in the DMZ. In Quezon, we flew a lot of missions in Quezon, prior to the siege, and then during the siege. That was probably one of the hairiest places that we went into. It had, like there was always a memory of when we went in there. There was a C-130 crashed at the end of the strip. They were doing a low altitude extraction drop, and something happened, and they crashed. And the guy the loadmaster on that was my roommate at Dias from Pennsylvania. Lost him, and the guy that bunked above me that was his name's Dallas Moore. I think he was a crew chief or flight mechanic, and lost him up at Case on. I got hooked into a website about those who served on C-123s. It's really interesting. They've got all the crashes and that type noted in there, and I started to correspond with one of the guys that was there. He came into Fan Ring right towards the last 4 or 5 months of my tour there, and I didn't even really remember him until we started exchanging pictures. And sure enough, there he had a picture. He sent me him and I standing outside by the bunkers. And yeah, I guess I did. I know you. I couldn't remember.
What type of quarters did you have in Vietnam?
What kind of quarters?
Yes.
Well, they weren't air conditioned hooches. They were usually, most of them were two-story, and then down, of course, outside there was numerous latrine buildings and showers that were separate from the probably a whole lot better than a lot of guys got to use, because at least most cases we got to come back and sleep in our own bunk. But it was generally, if I recall, the weather was fairly favorable. You go certain times of the year up at Da Nang, outdoor shower facilities were pretty chilly, but never really got that cold. But
were you there during the monsoon season?
Yeah, we were there, of course, almost a full year, so we got to go through all the...
Where were you?
Where was I? I was at Fan Ring, but of course we went to various places, mostly in the northern half of the country. We didn't fly much in the Delta area, but yeah, I remember when it rained a lot there at Fan Ring, and the water was running everywhere. But and we enjoyed a lot of the trips into the Special Forces camp. When we got there around the time they ate, they always had real good food at the Special Forces camps.
Now, where were these camps?
Up in the Highlands.
In the Central Highlands?
The Central Highlands area, yeah.
Around An Khe and Pleiku?
Yeah. Just crossing over, basically. Yeah. We went into both those places. The 101st Cavalry. Was that on? I was trying to think.
The 1st Cavalry was at An Khe.
Yeah, I remember they had the big emblem on the mountain top there.
Hong Kong Mountain.
Yeah. Remember, I've got pictures of that in my book there.
That's where I was based.
Yeah, we used to go in there quite a bit. Yeah.
Did you have any contact with the local people?
With the local people?
Yeah.
Some. There was a little village there near Fan Ring. A little small village. Of course, the people we spent before I went up Fan Ring, spent some time in Saigon, and in other trips when I was on C-130s, we spent nights in some of the hotels there when we were there for overnight. So we had quite a bit of contact with them.
Did you have civilian KPs on post?
You know what now?
You have civilian KPs on post?
Yeah. And they were cleaning. They cleaned the barracks and the bathrooms or the latrines. A lot of fun. Well, some of it was fun. We had a lot of good guys.
What's your best memory of Vietnam?
best memory was probably getting on my return flight to come back home. But we were able to commandeer food here and there, and we'd come in the evenings. The guys who were around the barracks, we were pretty good at cooking up a storm on grills going, you know. And like this fellow that I've been talking to, he said, you may be the one that taught me how to pull off some steaks out of some of this pallets of stuff that we were hauling and storing back in the tail of the airplane where they stay halfway cool and no one ever knew the difference. Yeah, we did a lot of having somewhat of a big barbecue in the evenings, and kept everybody in pretty good spirits. Of course, when you're 19, 20, well, in fact, I turned 21 going over there, so just barely legal age. And, you know, at that age, we drank a lot of beer, and had a lot of. I can remember the New Year's Eve party at the club, and then at various we threw a big party. We had big hits the next day. But,
now, what's your worst memory of
the worst memory? Oh, I guess the missions that we were, when things really got hot and heavy, and they had the siege going at Quezon, where we had to fly in there. Generally, you know, we were in and out as quick as we could, and you had duties to perform, so you didn't have to think about too much about mortars hitting the plane. But there were a few of them that got damaged by mortars and couldn't get out and had to stay until somebody could come and get them. But that was probably the worst thing that went on.
Now, did you put weapons on your airplanes?
We carried an M16 and a sidearm 38. That's all. Okay. All the crew members carried that, but other than that, we didn't have anything, any heavy duty hardware at all.
Have any of your airplanes shot down by enemy fire?
Did we have any? I thought that the crew that we lost up there was shot down, but looking at what they had on that website, it was some other problem that some type of an engine problem that caused them to go down. But I don't think the biggest damaged airplane that I looked at that came back in were C-130s that were when they were doing the flying over that Ashaw Valley that the B-52s bombed so heavily. You wouldn't believe the pictures, the damage, those things, and they still made it back. The aileron shot off, the tail shot off, and they still, ACAC fire just took a pretty good toll on some of them.
How long were you in Vietnam?
How long? About 12 months.
12 months.
Yeah.
So you arrived there in...
Arrived there 1st of July. I think I left about end of July, I think it was.
Hold on.
Sure.
Sorry.
Where was?
You arrived in July of 67.
Oh yeah, I think we. It must have been 1st of June, because it was a full year, and I remember arriving back home right there in early July. By the time I went to up at Tacoma, I think it was, where we flew into, and that's where I did my out processing. I got out a few months early because my ETO was October, 1st of October, and they didn't want to reassign. But
what was your reaction when you landed back in the States?
Excitement. Just it was a long flight. I think it was like a 17-hour flight. You know, pretty well stuck in a seat. You couldn't hardly move.
Did you fly commercial or fly?
Yeah, it was commercial.
Yeah.
In fact, going over and back were
Yeah.
commercial. But no first class. It was all. But you just to be able to get back, and you know, I think about, you know, I made a mistake by, you know, not staying in Of course, you tell yourself when you begin that 4-year period, well, I'm going to serve that 4 years, and then I want to leave. And I guess it's hard to change your mind, and plus realizing with all that going on that in that particular job classification I was in, that we'd probably be back in a year or two again. So that was one of the main reasons that I got out. But I regret I didn't stay in the Air Guard. I should have gotten the Air Guard and stayed with it, and I didn't do that either.
What did you do after you left the Air Force? Oh, when did you get your discharge?
Okay, I was discharged as soon as I flew back from Vietnam, and they discharged me and gave me, settled with me, and bought me my air ticket to Tulsa. And well, I enrolled in it's what's UCO now, but back then it was a different name at Edmond. I enrolled there because some of my classmates were going, friends were going there, so I went to school there for a semester, and I met right after I got back a guy I graduated with. He was responsible for introducing me to my future wife, so we got engaged and tried to get married. So I left after a semester. I left school. I better go to work, so I applied for employment at Phillips and was hired in the research development department. And that was January 27th, 1969. And the wife and I got married on April 5th of 1969. And then, I worked about 4 or 5 months, and they had this big layoff. And so I was caught in the last one's hired type deal. And so I was offered an opportunity to go downtown in the community department to work through that summer, and then then I decided once that was complete, then I'd probably go back to school. But during that time I was working in the computing department, they announced that they were going to move the credit card center from Kansas City area to Bartlesville, and they were looking for guys and employees that would were willing to go up there and work for a year and then move back. So I decided it sounded like a pretty good deal, so I decided to take that. And the wife she had been working since 1965, she got out of high school, and they said no problem, they'd find her a position too. So both of us went to Kansas City and worked a year, and came back down after a year exactly almost, and they started the credit card center up in Bartlesville, and I worked about 33 years, I guess, in the credit card center, computing and programming, and got a chance to retire early in 2002. Got a buyout at 56, so I didn't pass it up. I took it. So we've been happily retired for 14 years, I guess, now.
Is that a Distinguished Flying Cross on your tag?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
I got two. We got one for a mission into Then I think it was. We came under a mortar attack, and I didn't realize any of that was really going on. We went in, and this all came. Somebody applied for them. Then I got one for mission in Quezon during the siege, and of course then I got the Distinguished Flying Cross as an Oak Leaf cluster for missions. But got notification after I was out on that, and I never thought much about any of it till later on. I didn't even just like this tag I got. It was only a few years ago that I had that, that made. But I just, as a young fellow, it didn't. I worked with a guy that had the Silver Star when I went to Kansas City, and it was pretty impressive. But the Bronze Star, there's quite a few of those. I never thought much about it, but you know, it's just basically an honor to have gotten the privilege to serve, and that's just, you know, something happens, you know, nothing spectacular, dragging any wounded buddies across and saving any lives, just doing our job, and you know, somebody applied.
Would you join the Air Force again?
Would I join it again?
Yeah.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. It was good experience.
I'd like to do a word association. I'll give you some words and you give me a reaction.
Okay.
First one's basic training.
Lonely. Lonely. That's the tough part, the initial. Separated from, you know, family and friends, and everybody's off, you know, school, and you're, especially some of the songs, 500 miles away from home, and they were popular about that time. You sit and listen to those songs and feel sorry for yourself. But the more you get immersed in routines, the longer you're in, the more that fades, and you come back home less. And you have basically a new set of friends, and you kind of forget about a lot of it. But initially, it's tough when you leave and go to Oklahoma City to be inducted, and you're a, well, let's say 18-year-old maybe. It's a big change. You grow up a lot, and that's, you know, to me that's a lot of what's missing in a lot of these young guys' lives today. That they're not forced to serve in some capacity for their country.
C-130.
C-130. Tough as nails. Tough as nails. Those things, they're venerable. They keep bringing out new models. It's one of the few that they, you know, just.
I heard it has the best safety record of any airplane.
I think it probably does, because, you know, they say those things that fly on one engine. We never had to. We had some that flew on 3. I don't know if we ever got 2 or not, but I don't recall any close calls. All the hours that we flew on C-130s, I don't recall any. Good cruise. Good cruise.
C-123.
C-123. Short takeoff capability. That was with the jets. They made a lot of difference in being able to haul a load and get out on a short runway, and probably made it a lot safer.
I'd like to ask, whenever you land at someone like Quezon, how do you unload that airplane?
Quick. Just generally, if it's cargo, it's on pallets. They've got forklifts. You immediately get there. You open her up, drop it. You can roll stuff out, unstrap it, and you're getting a lot of that, getting it loose before you ever get it parked. And then so you can quickly, and then anybody that's going, they crawl on, scramble on, and hang on, because we're rolling just as soon as we can get everybody off and back on it.
Loadmaster.
Loadmaster. Well, weights and balances is probably the thing that comes to mind.
Vietnam.
Beautiful country. Beautiful country.
Lyndon Johnson.
Big Texan.
Richard Nixon.
I was a big Richard Nixon fan. I think he was a little paranoid, but I think he was a good president. I think compared to what some of these guys have done, I think he got shafted a little bit. But anyway, yeah, I was initially I always liked Richard Nixon. I always liked Eisenhower. When I first old enough to think much about politics, I thought Eisenhower was a good leader.
How do you want to be remembered?
As a guy that that gave his best and that had a good name, that nobody could find anything negative to say about him.
Anything else you want to talk about?
I can't think of anything. Right offhand, anyway.
What's your wife's name?
Billy.
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 Now, where'd you meet her?
Right here in Bartlesville.
In
She
Bartlesville,
was.
okay.
It was kind of a funny deal. Like I say, this classmate of mine that he ended up serving, making a career out of the Air Force. But he said, when I back here in town here, he said, I know some girls, and so and the first time we went, we just kind of went over to drop in. They had an apartment. Both of them, the girls and her roommates, were working at Phillips, and she had we knocked on the doors, came to the door, but she had a male friend that was there, so we just we excused ourselves and left. But I didn't give up. I called her back, and we got set up a date. Went to drive-in. First date was drive-in out here at Hilltop. But we dated while I was going to school at Edmond, and decided to get married and got engaged. And not too long a courtship, actually from like September of '68. We got married in April '69, so we didn't date a long time. Made decisions, at that point.
Yep.
You're 22. That man, you don't want to become an old man without finding a mate. So a little different today.
Yeah. Well, sir,
they wait a lot longer.
This is an excellent interview.
Well, thank you.
I want to thank you for your service and thank you for the interview.
Well, I appreciate you doing it. I know it's you've talked to a lot of. I've read a lot of them, and a lot of interesting guys that really.
Everybody did something.
Gave a lot. That did something. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like I say, I'm not. We just did what we were trained to do in our job, and nothing too much above and beyond. But anyway, it was a pleasant experience,
yes.
mostly.
Okay, again, this is June 20th, 2016. My name is Joe Todd. This has been an interview with Lewis Davis in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Thank you.
You're welcome.